focus on outcomes. Oh yeah. And I always say, like, make your decision, make your choices based on outcomes. What you really do want is like more like your wording, right, Paul?
Right. Well, think about this. You want a momentum in life. In other words, if you're on a path, you want to feel that you're walking the path. That means momentum. If you want to evolve, it means you're moving forward. Now, the big question is, what are you moving towards?
Right.
So we again go back to personal preference, because nobody's going to be making this choice for you. They're not saying, we'll start off at point A here and end up at point Z there. That's an uninteresting journey because it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to someone else.
Wow.
And so personal preference chooses which direction to go. So again, you're looking into that diverse world and making choices about which aspect you want to focus on and what objectives you would like to reach.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start doing this, in other words, it comes from personal preference, what actually happens is you begin on that path to recognize your purpose. Mm-hmm. Because there will be some things on that path that really stimulate you. If you're reaching for something that you want in life and you're on that journey, because there's always a journey, it's always a process from point A to point Z.
Yep. As
you're on that journey, there are things that will happen and you'll go, wow, I really like that, or not so much that. And this is important because now you're filtering through everything, and the parts that stimulate you most are attached to your very reason and purpose for being here. So your job in living a life is to discover who you are, know why you are here. In other words, if we just go up to any individual and say, do you know why you're here? And, the common answer will be, well, I was born and this is the path I'm on, and I'm not quite sure why I'm here, but I'm surviving. And they haven't discovered yet who they are. In other words, there's no purpose. But find someone who has purpose. In other words, find someone who's on a path, who is reaching for a dream. They will quickly give you 10 points on why they're here. Well, I'm here to X, Y, and Z. And they will relay it to you and why. They've discovered it along the way. They've formed an objective. They are reaching for that. And everyone thinks it's the end goal objective that makes it happen. It's actually not. It's the journey. Because as you're on the journey, you start seeing everything. You get into the car and you're deciding to travel to a different state. As you're traveling, your eye picks up different scenery. It picks up the different types of buildings and stuff that there are. You travel on a dirt road. You have these experiences as you're getting there, and then you get there. But part of the enjoyment is actually the trip there.
Oh yeah, you hear that from people who set these huge goals, they attain them, they wake up and they're like, now what? And they quickly create a new one to like stay alive and keep going, because that's just human beings love experiences.
Yeah.
Our soul comes for the experience, embodies, and then it's like, come on, human, we're doing this.
When it feels like you're doing something against the grain, in other words, oh yes, I'm on this trip and we're not quite there yet and it's going to be another 2 hours, that's against the grain. Yeah. And that's not so good. That doesn't feel so good. But when you're reaching for an objective and you see the end goal in sight, that's when it becomes very interesting. Yep. Because what you're doing is you're continuously reaching for that objective. You see the horizon and you have this positive expectation for getting there.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing that I want to add in, and this is very interesting. This is something that everyone needs to consider. Is let's theorize that you reach your end goal objective. In other words, you've got to that destination, and wow, I'm here. The first thing is enjoy it. In other words, you're there.
Nice.
You're there. You're on the top of the summit. Have a look at the view. Really soak it in. Enjoy it. You know, net everything you can from that feeling of having reached it for as long as you possibly can until it's saturated. In other words, okay, yeah, now I've done it. Now here's the interesting thing, and this is what I want to add in as a final piece, is you never get it done. In other words, once you've reached that objective, you've reached it, you've enjoyed it, you've netted from it, the big question is, from a personal point of view, now what? Mm-hmm. In other words, what's the next thing that I'm going to choose? And here's the interesting part of that. You choose from a new vantage point. Vantage point means you've had that experience, you've been on the journey, you've experienced it, you've enjoyed it, you've lived in it with bliss, and from that position, you're now elevating yourself because you're saying, where to now? What's the next journey? And because you've come from that contrast, you're selecting more, and most importantly, you are evolving. Yeah, I reached the summit. I'm going to jump out of an aeroplane. You know, it's like, what's the next most exciting thing that I can do? I'm giving those as examples, but I'm just trying to paint a picture in terms of you never get it done. So don't think, okay, well, I'm going to reach that objective and I'm going to be happy and that's it. It doesn't work that way. Because you know the whole misconception of the white picket fence house. So the lady has the dream. She says, what I want is the white picket fence house, a hubby that loves me, enough finances to keep us going, and a little dog to keep me company, all right? And perhaps a couple of children running around. So that's the white picket dream. What happens once you've got all of that? Oh, it doesn't stay the same. Hubby's evolving, the kids are evolving.
Evolving.
The white paint is dissolving. And so if you stay there, in other words, okay, I've reached my dream, this is all I wanted. If you stay there, it will dissolve around you. So what's the point of staying? The point is, what next? Okay, I've got the house. What would be better than that? A little waterfall in the backyard? It doesn't matter what it is that you choose, but the point here is that your life is about continuous personal evolution. Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you're not evolving, you're dissolving. And if you're dissolving, you're not feeling so good about yourself. In other words, self-worth will drop down to an all-time low.
Right.
And negative emotion is there to remind you that you're not being who you could be. In other words, you're not using that potential. What are you adding to all that is?
Mm-hmm. If you're not evolving, you're dissolving one. So.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes.
It does, and it doesn't mean that you're preaching seek material things one after another to add to your house, right? It's
right.
Yeah, it's what's going to bring you the charge. Like, yeah, you know, that was so cool. And like you said, what's next? It's kind of like at the amusement park. It's like, whoa, that ride was something, you know, and it's like, we will take a little calmer ride, but that's what's next. Or I'm going to take one that really scares me, and that's what's next. It's just a choice.
Well, you know, one of the analogies that I put in to help people understand this whole principle of needing to evolve is I'd ask someone, you know, do you like chocolate? Most people like chocolate. They would say, yeah, I really like a good bar of chocolate. And so I would say to them, okay, well, you know, if I put you into a white room, so that's all there was in the room, and I took chocolate from all around the world and placed it into that room for you to sit and indulge in, what would be the first thing you would do? And I'd say indulge, because, wow, this comes from Spain and this comes from the Himalayas, and this one comes from Germany, and they would be tasting and going on that journey of, gee, what's all this chocolate about?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. Stay in that room, stay with that chocolate. There'll come a point in time where you'll not want to see another piece of chocolate.
Yeah, that's special. That's called satiation.
Yeah. But besides that, the whole principle of it is you would lose interest.
Right.
Why? You saturate the experience.
Yep.
And the experience is great when you don't know it. In other words, when you put that one piece in that comes from Spain and you're tasting those flavors and you're saying to yourself, wow, this is new and invigorating. But keep putting the same piece and eventually it becomes old.
Yep.
Becomes old to the point, yeah, I know what that tastes like. It's okay. And so you have to, in life, understand that you can't hang on to one thing. Life is about moving from one point to another, from one vantage point to the next.
Yeah. It really reminds me a lot of addiction, because it's like you get into one layer and it's like, oh, that gave you the kick, and then it's like it's not kicking anymore. So you go to the next level and the next level, and you get into harder and harder drugs, right?
That's it. That's it. And if you look at that cycle, and that's why I focus so much on addiction, because it's a number one human trait to escape. It's repeating the same type of behavior again and again. And so what we're saying and what we've said at the end here is, when you repeat something over and over and over and over, it eventually you exhaust it. In other words, that's not that stimulating anymore. And so this is why people reach for higher drugs or bigger cocktails. It's because, what can I add to that to get back to that place that I was feeling before? And it doesn't work. And here's the thing about addiction in the field of narcotics and alcoholism and stuff. It does not work. So the body's adapting the whole time. Exactly. to everything, and so you have to increase those levels until you really comatose. It's like, I don't have any energy and this is not really doing, and you're numb, and that's a really good way of explaining it, because when you're numb and when you're empty, you're not living life.
Right.
And so it's understandable. The sad thing about addiction, in any form, doesn't matter, even if it's not intoxicants, it's a very slow evolutionary growth towards decay.
Yep. And
so you don't really notice it along the way.
Yep. And you've sped it up, though. I mean, typically it's a very slow growth out as well. And you really landed on some really key things in all your observations and all the addiction work that you've been involved in. And you have some really speedy ways that, like, no psychologists or licensed social worker or whatever would even believe you, right?
That's 100% correct. But one of the reasons why I adapted the methodology to suit personal evolutionary growth is because the key here is I understood that mind was actually the biggest obstacle to overcome. And the question was why? And it was because you had programmed it to only look at life in a certain way.
Yeah.
So in deprogramming the mind, you get to look at life from different perspectives. The moment you do that, positive emotion comes back into the equation. Nice. Why? You start personally evolving. In fact, you get back on track.
Yep.
And so it's like being reborn. And one of the things with any clients that come to me and that I enjoy the most, in other words, this would be the cherry on top for me, is to see their personal growth, to see their excitement and happiness with embracing life.
Yeah.
There's no better reward than that.
Yep, I hear you. I love it. Love the work that you're doing out there, Paul. Keep it up. Thanks again for doing this with me and for getting the word out to people.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for being my friend. My love to you, and I enjoyed this very much.
Good. Bye for now.
Bye for now.